You were born at a time when all of the countries and states around the world already had their borders, but not all borders are the same. Even if you just focus on U.S. states, some just look straight up weird, almost like a 5-year-old drew them with his own unstable hands. Now, you'd be surprised to know that these borders are not a coincidence. They all came about due to politics, natural factors, or just disputes that led to some of the most ragged-looking borders, especially within the U.S. So, here are 15 of the weirdest shaped U.S. states that you'll ever come across. 1. Maryland's among the weirdest state borders you'll ever come across. But why? Well, I'm gonna have to take you back to the 1760s. There was quite a bit of squabbling over borders. The famous Mason-Dixon line was drawn by two guys, Charles Mason and Jeremiah Dixon, to settle a beef with Pennsylvania. Maryland could have gobbled up Philadelphia if this line hadn't been established. But this line is also the strangest thing about Maryland's borders. It's just too straight. So, if you were wondering how a piece of land can be cut in such a perfect line by nature, you now know why. It's not natural. Then, there's the western boundary, which hugs the Potomac River. At one point, this border gets so narrow that it's less than 2 miles wide, which is pretty rare. On the eastern side, the Delmarva Peninsula's border is a product of religious clashes and some seriously messed up maps. As for the southern border with Virginia, it's been a game of adjustments thanks to surveying slip-ups and, believe it or not, arguments over oysters. 2. West Virginia's borders are a whole saga of their own, born out of the Civil War drama. You won't find a single continuous line on this thing because the whole state is a jagged mess, tracing natural features like the Ohio River to the west and the Potomac River to the east. Then there's a strip of land randomly protruding up from the top left side, making it look like it's a frog jumping around. Imagine 50 counties in northwestern Virginia deciding, nah, we're sticking with the Union, and voila, West Virginia was born in 1863. Part of the border even follows the infamous Mason-Dixon line. Now you might be thinking, what about the two straight edges on the north of the state? That's where you know that the border is human-made. It's all a mix of geographical landmarks and the political tug-of-war of the time. 3. Right from the first glance, you can tell that Florida's appearance is just strange. It dips like a hook at the top, and its coastline juts dramatically into the ocean. The Panhandle stretches unnaturally westward like an arm reaching out, and proportionally, it all just looks off. But why exactly does it look like that? This unique shape is thanks to the Florida Peninsula, jutting out between the Gulf of Mexico and the Atlantic Ocean. Do you see the Panhandle stretching west? That's the result of old territorial disputes and deals among the British, Spanish, and eventually the United States. Florida's borders with Georgia and Alabama are pretty straightforward, literally. The western edge of the Panhandle hugs the Perdido River, a decision made official with the Adams-Onis Treaty with Spain in 1819. So next time you look at a map, remember that Florida's shape is as much about old political drama as it is about geography. 4. Ever noticed Oklahoma's Panhandle and wondered, what's up with that? The northern border is oddly straight, while its southern border features a peculiar horizontal panhandle. The state's bottom also just jags up and down like a saw blade. Now, if you're looking for an explanation, I've got one for you. That odd stretch of horizontal land exists because Texas had to give up claims to anything north of the Missouri Compromise line back in 1850. So Oklahoma's northern border just follows that line. The eastern side is completely defined by the Arkansas River and the 100th meridian west. Down south, it's the Red River doing the job. These borders, all set by 19th century treaties and land deals, make Oklahoma look like it has a handle sticking out, which gets funnier the longer you look at it. 5. Louisiana's jagged border looks like a broken boot with its jagged north boundary and a wildly curved, swampland-strewn southern coastline dipping into the Gulf. It's a boxy kind of shape with too many straight edges, almost making it look like a flat paper cutout instead of a piece of land. The northern border sits neatly on the 33rd parallel north, while the eastern edge is the ever-winding Mississippi River. Head south and you hit the Gulf of Mexico coastline. The western boundary, shaped by the Adams-Onis Treaty of 1819, follows the Sabine River and the 94th meridian west. It's like Mother Nature decided to make a boot out of rivers and coastlines, and voila, Louisiana was born. 6. Texas is huge, but why does it look so strange? It features bizarre bends and bulges, with a panhandle shooting straight north and a wildly irregular southern edge tracing the Rio Grande like an erratic squiggle. Here are the answers you've been looking for. Its northern border with Oklahoma follows the Red River, thanks to the Adams-Onis Treaty of 1819. To the east, the Sabine River draws the line between Texas, Louisiana, and Arkansas. The long southern border with Mexico is marked by the Rio Grande, set after the Mexican-American War and the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo in 1848. The western edge, bordering New Mexico, was decided by the Compromise of 1850. Texas gave up some land to clear its debts, ending up with its current sprawling shape, ready for you to look at and amuse yourself while you're at it. 7. Nevada's shape is an angular trapezoid with a narrow southern tip poking into the desert. The borders are straight and abrupt, creating an unnatural geometric feel. Nothing about this land feels like the borders were natural, and if you're wondering why, here's your answer. Because they were influenced by the 19th century mining boom. The eastern side follows the 114th 15th meridian west. Down south, Nevada scooped up land to include valuable minerals and the Colorado River. The western boundary, shared with California, rides along the Sierra Nevada mountains. The northern border with Oregon and Idaho is a jagged line thanks to old surveying methods. Nevada's broad base and narrow top are all about the gold rush and geographic features. So basically, everybody else messed with Nevada, and now it just ate. Idaho's shape is a bit of a head-scratcher, specifically because its thin northern chimney weirdly contrasts with its broader southern section, creating a state that looks like a pot on a tall, narrow stovepipe. The proportions are weird, and you get the feeling of the state existing on the edge of a paper that was just haphazardly torn off. The northern panhandle is squeezed between Washington and Montana to give Idaho access to gold mines and trade routes. On the western side, the Snake River defines the border with Oregon. The eastern boundary with Wyoming and Montana is all about the Bitterroot Range. Down south, the 42nd parallel north marks the border with Nevada and Utah. Idaho's irregular shape reflects its 19th century priorities, resources, and trade routes, but today it just exists as this weirdly shaped state whose shape serves no purpose. 9 Tennessee's long, narrow rectangle spans nearly 500 miles east to west, with uneven, jagged borders that twist and turn through the Appalachian Mountains and river valleys. The northern border sits on the 36°30 parallel north, set by early colonial agreements. The southern boundary, along the 35th parallel north, was established by treaties with Native American tribes. The eastern edge follows the Appalachian Mountains, while the western boundary is marked by the Mississippi River. These borders, a mix of colonial charters, Native American treaties, and natural landmarks, give Tennessee its distinct east-west stretch. I mean, Tennessee isn't to blame, it's just everybody else's fault. 10. Missouri's shape is often compared to a misshapen kite. The eastern border follows the Mississippi River's wild meanders, creating wavy, serpentine edges, while the rest is a mix of straight lines and erratic curves. The northern border with Iowa follows the Des Moines River and the 40th parallel north. The western border, influenced by the Missouri River and the 95th meridian west, separates it from Kansas and Nebraska. Missouri's borders are a result of historical treaties, river courses, and territorial disputes, all of which got together to form this strange land that people can't help but feel weird about. 11. Ever looked at New Hampshire on a map and thought, that looks like a house leaning sideways? Well, you're not alone. This state's northern border with Quebec, Canada, follows the 45th parallel north. Why? To keep the British and French territories nicely separated. Because of that, New Hampshire's borders form an uneven, crooked triangle, with its western edge tracing the Connecticut River and a curious northeast jut towards Maine. Then there's the southern border with Massachusetts, set by a 1741 royal decree after loads of disputes and surveys. And finally, the western edge follows the Connecticut River, giving New Hampshire its quirky, house-like shape. Had it not been for those historical events, you'd think maybe New Hampshire would look a bit more normal. No? 12. Michigan is a state of two tails, or should I say two land masses. Picture a mitten and a rabbit. The Upper Peninsula was Michigan's prize from the Toledo War Compromise with Ohio in 1836, giving it great access to the Great Lakes. The Lower Peninsula's shape is thanks to natural water features like Lake Michigan and Lake Huron. Michigan's split is peculiar, and when you think of those jagged coastlines, you should thank the glaciers. They carved out Michigan's mitten-like appearance. Separating the two peninsulas are the Straits of Mackinac, making Michigan look like it's waving hello with both hands. 13. If you've ever thought Kentucky looks like a fried chicken drumstick, you're not wrong. Kentucky's southern border is a straight line, but the northern border twists erratically with the Ohio River, creating an oddly shaped, irregular northern edge. Now, there's a reason for all of that. The state's northern border follows the Ohio River, a result of colonial charters and the Northwest Ordinance. The western edge, meeting Missouri, is defined by the Mississippi River. To the south, Kentucky's border with Tennessee runs along the parallel north, courtesy of the Missouri Compromise. The eastern boundary, marked by the Appalachian Mountains, creates a drumstick-like outline. Makes you wonder if Colonel Sanders had anything to do with it, right? 14. Massachusetts has a very strange look when you think about it, especially with Cape Cod jutting out into the Atlantic like a bicep. The rest of the state's borders are just weirdly straight, creating a parallelogram kind of shape. The northern border with New Hampshire was set in 1741 by a royal decree. The southern borders with Connecticut and Rhode Island were sorted out through colonial agreements. Over on the west, the border with New York runs along the Taconic Mountains. This mix of coastal geography and historical boundary disputes gives Massachusetts its distinct arm-like appearance, muscle, and all. Don't get jealous, you can work on it too. 15. New Jersey's borders are an uneven mix of straight lines and curving river boundaries, with a strange, narrow southern tip that tapers into the Atlantic. Its shape was born from colonial history and natural features. The eastern border with New York follows the Hudson River and stretches along the Atlantic Ocean coastline, thanks to early Dutch and English settlements. The western boundary with Pennsylvania is defined by the Delaware River. Up north, the border was determined by colonial charters and the 1774 Quintipartite Deed. With its prominent coastline and river boundaries, New Jersey Jersey's irregular shape creates that distinctive axe head look, which can be quite fascinating to look at. And that brings us to the end of this video. Which of these US states is shaped too weird for you to believe? Let me know in the comments, and if you liked this video, be sure to check out this other one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.